USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast for January 17th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. Our podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four coming up on April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Well, this week's Game of the Week highlights one of the great rivalries in college hockey as Colorado College faces Denver. Saturday night's home-and-home matchup at Magnus Arena in Denver is the USCHO Game of the Week.
And to talk about this week's Game of the Week between Denver and Colorado College, it's Denver assistant coach and a longtime friend of college hockey, that is for sure. That's Dallas Ferguson. Dallas, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show because it's been a while since we got to talk to you in your great days at Alaska.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Hey, this season, and especially of late, a lot of good hockey played by this Denver team. I got to see you when you were out in the East Coast here playing Merrimack and Lowell and saw some real opportunistic hockey, but some great defense. What are some of the defining moments thus far for this season for Denver?
Yeah, I think seems like with this young group, it seems like there's been, lots of growth, I think, from week to week. And I think that's something, we've had strong leadership from our returning players. And then, our young guys are, obviously with the number of them, I think they're getting a good opportunity to play, but I think they're taking advantage of the opportunity to, get in there and learn how to play college hockey. And, they're getting better and they're growing as they grow, our team grows. And, I think a big part of that is our strong, leadership from our returning players.
I mentioned the word defensive, and I don't know if that's fair. I mean, there's been games that your team has put up a lot of goals, but I look at the last, 7 games, goals against 1-1-1, 3-3, 0-2. This is a team that is finding a way to keep the puck out of their net.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's within the way we want to play. I think there's a lot of puck pressure and forcing teams and limiting the space and the time that they have to generate offense against us. So I think there's an element of just staying on our toes and pursuing the puck. And when we don't have it, let's make sure that we're working as a unit of 5 to, put puck pressure on our opponents and hopefully force them into turning the puck over. And then obviously that puts us in a better situation to create offense. And, it seems like we're kind of getting it from everywhere. I think guys are just chipping in and, trying to keep the game in front of us and not hurt ourselves. And I think it's a lot of hard work with the guys and they're committed to that. And I think that shows just on the results of our game. I think we've been getting great goaltending. I think probably the one thing when we talk about our play and, our defensive game, I guess, if you will, I think, earlier in the year, I think we were giving up a lot more high quality chances in the games and, still finding ways to get wins. But I think now we're starting to, bring that number down as far as the opportunities and the grade A scoring chances that we're giving up. And I think that's, again, just kind of as our team matures and grows and our game grows, I think that you're starting to see that. So, when we weren't there early on, I thought our goaltending was excellent. I think even, you still need your goaltending to, stop all the ones they're supposed to and a couple that they're not. And I think they've done their job. And, we've gotten that both from Philip and Devin this year and got a group of guys in front of them that are committed to work without the puck. And, kind of the reward is to get the puck back as quick as possible.
You just mentioned a distributed offense, right? My count, 10 different players with double-digit points, 3 guys with double-digits goals, led by Jared Lukasevich. And we have seen what he can do as a senior. He's obviously means so much to your team. I cut the plays of the week for USCHO every week, and I feel like he's in there somehow every single week. What a dynamic player he is. What does he mean for this Denver team?
Well, it means a lot. I mean, I think he's first of all, I think, with me just coming to the program this year, you kind of look at the roster and you look, there's not a lot of upperclassmen and, you look at the quality of all of them. I mean, they're good people and they're program guys. And, you look at Jared and just look at his growth from when he, first got on campus to where he is now, both, on and off the ice. I think it's a process that you kind of, again, I've only been working with him for half a year, but you listen to the staff that's had him his whole career and they can't say enough positive things about his growth and his commitment to recognize, where he's at in his game on and off the ice and things that he's had to do to develop his game and get it to where it is now. So I think it's, hats off to him, to his commitment to his development. It's a shared responsibility. And, he's a guy that I think is just an emotional leader for us. I mean, he's a, wears it on his sleeve type of guy. He's a matter-of-fact guy. So when he's addressing the team, I mean, it's straight to the point. There's not a lot of fluff with him. And, it just seems like when we've needed big plays, in overtime or certain times of the game, he's been the guy that just elevates his game. And it's a huge quality to have as a player. I mean, you look down the bench and who's going to get it done. And, he's not someone that's calling for it. He's just someone that, goes out and makes it happen. And he does a lot of the heavy lifting, for our forward group and leads by example that way. And, not everything you're going to do is glamorous, but at the end, it's going to hopefully provide our team opportunities to be successful. And I think that's what Jared's done and been a tremendous leader for us.
You mentioned also your freshman class, and it is a large class, and it's having an impact. I believe it's 4 of your top 7 scorers are freshmen. I look at Cole Gutman with 10 goals already. Emilio Pedersen, 4 of his 5 goals coming on the power play. These are guys that seem to have a nose for the net.
Yeah, no, there's some talent there. I mean, they, again, they're coming into a situation, they're offensive players that have, been put into situations to be able to use their skill set and develop their skill set at this level. And, I think it's good to see their growth. I mean, you see the offensive ability, but I think now you're starting to see, like, they're not a secret anymore, right? So, I mean, when teams are looking at their, game plan against us, they know that, some of these guys are pretty dangerous players. So they're starting, to get matchups that are against, teams that are, their top D pairing, maybe a checking line, that type of stuff. And they're still finding ways to put points on the board. So I think that's a big part of their development and, know that their game's going in the right direction when they're getting it done against tough matchups. And, and I think that just like all the players are, they come into the program like this where they're tremendous, ability and talents. And, they got to kind of reinvent themselves when they get to this level because it's a new level. And they haven't been intimidated by the opportunity. I think sometimes guys will come in and get a feel and check the temperature before they really push themselves and get going with it. I think they've kind of jumped in with both feet and, recognize that, if this team's going to go, we need everybody. So we got no room for passengers. And, then when they have that type of forward moving attitude, I think that you start to see their abilities start to come out. And it's been a big part of our success so far this year.
Denver assistant coach Dallas Ferguson's our guest. One of the biggest rivalries, the most storied rivalries in college hockey is the battle for the Gold Pan. The first 2 of 4 games coming up. Only Michigan and Michigan State have a longer rivalry history. What have you learned about that, and how much on the minds of that is this for the Denver team?
Well, I think it's like, I've learned Denver has a real strong hockey history. I mean, you get it as soon as you get on campus, you start to get a feel for, how important the program is to the alumni that are really close to the program, to the people that work at the university, to the university itself. So you start to sense that. And then, when it probably hasn't been talked about a whole lot until probably Saturday after the game, then all of a sudden full attention turned to, your preparation. But as you've learned, it's more than just 2 games in conference and for a schedule. It's against your biggest rival. So you get a sense for how important it is to, a lot of alumni, I think, are starting to reach out. And, there's been a few at practice and, they start to share their stories a little bit about the program and what this rivalry has meant to them. And I've had players, I've had, some friends throughout the years that have played, both for Denver and then for CC. And, I always remember even when back in the 90s when I was playing college hockey, they really, you got a sense just to, hearing them talk about their season, that's one of the things that was maybe a highlight for them in their season is the competition between the 2 programs. So I mean, again, you're kind of new to it, but I've been in rivalries, but you can get a sense of how important it is already this week. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing the puck drop on tomorrow night and throughout the weekend and see how the fans and how both campuses engage in the rivalry.
Now, with a half a season under your belt, you're also new to the whole NCHC scenario. What's that league like? How does that rank compared to the college hockey experience you've had with the new look WCHA and the CCHA before that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, through the, we've got obviously all our conference games left now. And, so we've played, enough games to know that, it's every period, every shift, every special team situation, everything is really important. And so I think the preparation that needs to go into being ready for these conference games, I think is very, very important. And, I think what I've recognized in watching enough film and pre-scouting teams is just how good the players are, for number one, and how well they're coached. I mean, there's a rhyme and a reason to everything that everybody's doing with their programs in this league. And, we just experienced it, last weekend against Omaha. I mean, if you look at it, you put all things aside, I mean, there were great games. And regardless of what each team's had up until this point in the season, I mean, they were playoff type games, 1-0, and then an overtime game. And the time and space that's available, the competitiveness that's involved in every shift is very high. So, I mean, it's, you kind of see over, since the conference was formed, I mean, you see kind of the teams that are advancing, the teams that are winning the championships, over the last, several years, I mean, are coming out of this league. And I think it's, so you kind of see that from afar, but then when you start to get into the trenches a little bit and see the quality of play just through video, and then obviously some of the, we haven't had a huge conference schedule yet, but we've had enough to know that you better be ready to go every night. Otherwise you're going to get left behind. So it's a great league, great players in the league, and very well coached programs.
Dallas, before we let you go this week, it will be, as we've mentioned, Colorado College, a big opponent, big games, rivalries. But what do you know about this team on the ice, the X's and O's, the things that you'll have to do well to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, I think special teams are going to be very important. And, that's something that, for us, our power play has kind of been, starting to gather some momentum. I think over the last couple of weekends, I think just with generating opportunity and momentum for our team, I don't think we've seen the puck get into the net as much as we would like, but I think that's going to be real important for us. They're not a team that takes a ton of penalties. So when we get an opportunity like that, I think we need to make sure we add some value to our game through there. But, they're a pretty aggressive team. Like I wasn't sure exactly. It sounded like their forecheck and their puck pressure wasn't heavy like like what we're seeing right now in videos. So we're looking at a team that's going to probably be coming at us pretty hard, not just with the intensity, but with bodies and puck pressure. So we're going to have to be able to play fast and make sure that our competitive skill is there. And, I think that being able to stick to our game plan and handle the ebbs and flows, I think that's something we talk about all the time. And there's going to be a lot of emotion in this series with just the rivalry, but there's game on the ice and the game off the ice with just everything that goes into this rivalry. So I think handling the emotions that carry over into the game that, allow you to still be able to be excited and, have the intensity that's required to be successful, but at the same time, keep our composure and be able to handle the ebbs and flows that happen throughout the course of a hockey game.
Well, it will be part of the battle for the gold pan, Colorado College and Denver. The first game Friday night will be at Colorado College, and Saturday night back in Denver. Saturday night's game, the USCHO.com game of the week. Dallas Ferguson from Denver University, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the weekend and good luck the rest of the way.
Yep, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
We'll have more of the USCHO.com Game of the Week podcast in just a moment. First, a word from the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
Speed and precision, unrelenting power. This trophy is not given, it must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
With a shot, saved by Morris. Takes the shot, retired!
Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 and get your tickets today.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Continuing with the USCHO.com Game of the Week podcast, I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly. And Jim, why don't we start with that home and home series? CC hosts on Friday, Denver hosts on Saturday, the first two of four games in NCHC play and part of the battle for the gold pan.
You know, it is. It certainly is one of those series that qualifies as the throw the records out series. I think we've seen a number of times where one of these two teams has been down and suddenly plays very well because it's a rivalry game. And I would expect that from Colorado College on both nights. I think they're going to be hyper competitive. This is a team that played some really good hockey at the beginning of the year, has hit some bumps along the road since then, comes in off 2 straight losses, but I know that Colorado College has the horses, and that's one of the scary things. Denver, they're not a team that scores a ton of goals. So if you're getting to a situation where you may be in a 1-goal deficit or a 2-goal deficit on the road or even at home, it can be a tough comeback. So I expect a more competitive series than maybe the records indicate. And of course, the emotions of the rivalry go right along with that.
I thought it was interesting that Dallas Ferguson mentioned seeing the video and doing some pre-scouting and surmising that CC may come at them a little bit harder and a little faster than they expected.
I agree with that. And I have seen CC a number of times in the last 3 years, and I think they continue to take steps forward under Mike Haviland. A good coach. He's got a pro background. He tries to get as much as he can out of his players. I think sometimes the talent hasn't been there, but at the same time, you know, there's enough talent there to get some great production. It's the confidence sometimes and the consistency of putting that talent together. But when that team is going, I think they're a very hard team to play against.
Let's stick with the NCHC for another key matchup, and that is arguably the hottest team in college hockey right now, Western Michigan. Andy Murray taking his squad in to take on Brett Larson's number 2 St. Cloud, arguably the best team, or at least the second best team in the country right now.
Yeah, I put St. Cloud right up in there in a mix with Denver and UMass as kind of the best trio. Any of those teams could be the number 1 seed come national tournament time. But this is a big series. Western is 9-0-1 in their last 10. They're going to have to go on the road. They're going to have to play a very tough opponent in a very competitive barn. St. Cloud, they had a loss last week, and I know they had a great comeback in game 2 to come back from 2-0 down and earn a victory, but I don't think they're going to rest on those laurels of salvaging a split. This is a team that wants to come out, wants to sweep this series. They probably believe they're the better team, but now they know that it's just not about what happens on paper. They know they have to show it. At the same time, Andy Murray seems to have his team playing as well as any team in college hockey. So this is a really good series. This is one that you want to see. This is one, if you have Fox Sports North Plus or whatever it is that is showing this series, this is one to watch.
Let's turn to the Big Ten. We have the irresistible force hosting the immovable object for the weekend, Penn State at home against Ohio State.
Yeah, the big offense against the big defense. And these teams have had a couple of battles that have, kind of rung out true to this. That, one night the offense is potting stuff for Penn State. The other night the Ohio State defense is showing why they're one of the best teams in the country, because they can play great defense. And, Penn State, I've said that it's very hard to rely on that offense consistently year in, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, even season after season. But this is, we've seen enough games where this offense has put up 6+ goals to know that it has potency. The problem is when you get shut down, are you ready to be in a 2-1 or a 3-2 game? When you're always in a 9-6 game or a 9-7 game, sometimes that track meet mentality gets into and you have the confidence. But do you have that same confidence when pucks aren't going in the net and you have to make sure that you don't give up more than 2 goals?
Let's look at Hockey East, where it's a home-and-home series. Number 8 Northeastern takes on number 1 UMass. They're in Amherst on Friday, back in Boston on Saturday.
There's some irony because I think last season these two teams met in the quarterfinals, and it was a great playoff series. At that time, it was number 2 in the conference, Northeastern number 7 seed UMass, and it was a battle for 2 nights. And one night got a little lopsided in the score in the third period, but the other night was a great battle. And I think at that point, and I'm pretty sure that Greg Carvel has said, at that point he realized his team could compete, and they just had to get a little bit better. Well, they're a lot bit better. They're the number 1 team in the country. They're the number 1 team in the pairwise. They lead us a lot of statistical categories. But Northeastern, a team that nobody expected from much this year because they lost so much in terms of their big line from a year ago. Nobody expected much from this Northeastern team. Here they are, number 8 in the country. They're playing good hockey. This should be a great series of two stylistically different teams. I think Northeastern tends to play a little bit of a heavier game. UMass, they have some speed. They're trying to use the rush a lot more. I'm interested to see which of these two teams can impose their will, impose their style on the game. And don't be surprised if home ice kind of dictates where the confidence lies in this series.
Let's turn to the ECAC. Maybe both of these teams flew under people's radar at the beginning of the season, but an excellent season by both. Clarkson takes on Yale at the Whale on Friday.
Yeah, and I think Yale is a team that I still have some questions about, but at times they've played very well, and they can be a dangerous team. I love Clarkson and the way that they've played since the break, obviously winning in Arizona and then having some good victories since then. And now they'll get to get back to league play and get to take on Yale on Friday night. We know that that's never the easiest environment to play in. That can be a very strong building, but it is break, I think, still down there. So whether that student population really has any influence, I'm not sure if when they're back, but I'm assuming they're not back till next week, and that might be a factor. But regardless, you have two good hockey teams here that like, both of them like to get after it. Either one of them can score goals, but both have great defenses.
Another big rivalry game in the ECAC this weekend. Ted Donato's Harvard Crimson heading in to take on Mike Schaefer's Cornell Big Red. Cornell fresh off a sweep of what Schaefer described as a very, very good Arizona State team.
Yeah, very impressive weekend, I thought, for Cornell last weekend to get that sweep against Arizona State, which had been pretty hot. Really put a kind of a chink in the armor of the Sun Devils. Harvard also played them, so that you had that kind of common opponent. And I think those were two pretty good games for Harvard, and they, I believe, only came away with one win. But when these two teams play, this is another one of those throw at the record series. They play some hard-fought games. They play some very intense battles. I would assume, despite the fact that there might be break happening for Cornell students, this will still be a packed building with the atmosphere that you always expect from Harvard Cornell. So it's one of my favorites, I know, in college hockey, and these guys know how to fill buildings, and it should be a great battle again.
And a non-conference game with two ECAC rivals, Union and RPI, head to Albany, site of two Frozen Fours and three names for the Times Union Center, but they'll be playing for the Mayor's Cup.
And this has always had some great intensity. I don't know if it's always been non-league. I feel like they played this as league games for a while, but regardless, RPI. One thing, I think RPI is a lot better than most people give them credit for. I saw them play a couple of very good non-league games this year. They have a lot of talent. David Smith, obviously a good coach that knows what he's doing, and Rick Bennett's team. They've had their ups and downs, but we know that they have the real ability to control a game like this. This is a rivalry game. I mean, we remember when Seth Appert and Rick Bennett were there, and it looked like there was going to be a coaching brawl at the end of the game at center ice instead of a players brawl. So those types of things happen, and when you have these great rivalries, and it's what makes rivalries great in essence. But it should be good hockey. This is two pretty good teams that don't like each other. It's a good rivalry. This almost feels like a rivalry week when you have three of your old school college hockey rivals playing one another. It should be a very entertaining hockey.
In the WCHA, number 18, Lake Superior State puts a long unbeaten streak on the line against number 6 Minnesota State.
I believe it's 7-0-1 for the Lakers, and that's a nice streak heading into Minnesota State. That team has had their falters since coming back from Christmas, but we all remember this Minnesota State team that was rolling in the first half, and they handled Ferris State like they were supposed to last weekend. Ferris is kind of having a down year, but this is a good Minnesota State team when they're rolling. I know they hit some problems in the end of December, and then didn't do that great out at the Desert Classic, but since then 4 straight wins in conference play, and they're right back in it. And this is a competitive series, and this is a series that could have some real bearing on the standings when all is said and done. This is a very tight WCHA top 4, and maybe even you could say top 5 and top 6, but the top 4 certainly it's pretty tight, and this weekend can go a long way to making some movement in that top 4.
One other rivalry game has nothing to do with the standings, but everything to do with tradition. Army hosting the Royal Military Academy of Canada.
And this is another great military battle. And we know that Army and Air Force played last week, and that's a fantastic American battle. But Army playing Royal Military it goes back, I believe, over 100 years, long tradition. There's been some battles in that. It's an interesting game because you have the Royal Military Academy that plays in a Canadian league where you have some older players. You have guys that are wearing half shields. There's fighting usually involved. So for Army, usually it's about staying disciplined and not getting pulled into some of the nonsense that goes on in the game. I remember when I was covering the MAC and Atlantic hockey, some of these games got to be so bad that either they stopped it for a couple of years, or at least they discussed stopping it for a couple of years. I can't remember, but these are some heated battles. Not the solid sentiments that you come out at the end with Air Force and Army. I think these, Air Force and Army, I believe they go and have dinner together afterwards. I don't know if that's the case in this cross-border battle, but it's always a fun one. I know for Army players, they look forward to this just as much as Air Force, and the tradition is as much about a part of this as it is the hockey.
Well, some great games coming up this weekend, and we're really starting to head down the home stretch. Just about another 6 weeks left of the regular season. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger. We'll catch you next time on the USCHO.com Game of the Week podcast.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit USCHO.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.